Hello and a warm welcome to everyone joining us today. My name is Gabriela Günterroth. I'm a partner at EY and I'm your moderator for this session. So you are actually joining a very unique format as we have different sessions throughout the day giving you EY insights on key trends. So please feel free to join as many of them as you like, even if you have not registered. And I'm delighted to have you here for this session where we talk about aligning business and people strategy and how a skill-centric approach can help to do so. And I'm very happy to have with me two distinct experts. So join me in welcoming Rachel and Tessa. Hello, and a warm welcome also to your end. So I suggest that before we have a deeper dive into the conversation, to introduce yourself, give a bit of background, what you do at EY and what your experience is. Rachel, you want to go first?
Yes, will do. Gabriela, it's great to be here today. So my name's Rachel Collins, and I have spent my career working with organisations to align their business and their people strategy. I've worked globally to do this, now based out of Switzerland. And actually, this is a really build from my original training as an occupational psychologist.
Thank you. Tessa?
First of all, great to be here. Thanks for having us. My name is Tessa and Blanken, originally from the Netherlands, but part of the Swiss people consulting practice now. I have a background in HR, but now focusing on helping my clients through skills transformations, redefining their talent strategies, and wider workforce transformations.
Very good, thank you very much. And for our audience online, we really encourage you to ask questions at any time by using the chat function. So at the end of this session, we will have a dedicated Q&A section where we will address all your questions. So please keep them coming in and submitting. So Rachel, to kick that off and setting a bit the scene and the bigger picture, what would you say are the key challenges that our clients and businesses are currently facing in the context of talents and work?
Yeah, thank you. So I think we're seeing at the moment some major shifts in economic, geopolitical, and demographic changes. And alongside that, you've got rapid technological advancement. And all those are having a significant shift on the workforce that you need. If we look at the Swiss Skills Index, it's seeing some improvements, but we're seeing key shortages in areas such as cyber, robotics, AI and data. So some really key areas that are critical to navigating these shifts.
And I mean, AI, very hot topic. So if we look at AI specifically and how that is shaping the job market and also the workforce demands.
Yeah, no, and thank you for asking that. And I think if we look at AI, this is really one of the most significant shifts we have seen on the way work gets done since the Industrial Revolution. It means that technology, automation, and AI, if I look at those collectively, are really changing roles and skills that are in demand. Organisations, for them, it's really important to be proactive in this space and really think, actually, how is this changing the skills that are going to be really, really important as we adopt and leverage AI in our everyday practices. So a lot of firms are actually really focusing on those human skills, and we'll focus a little bit more on that, but things like the curiosity and the resilience and those interpersonal skills that actually become more important as we adopt things like AI and automation and digital.
Yeah, and I mean, we experience it ourselves every day that AI has really an influence on our daily tasks and job roles and so on. So would you say how are businesses and employees responding right now to that?
Yeah, so I think firms are actually struggling. Many firms are struggling to really be proactive about this. I'd say we're seeing a number of different organisations starting to trial and experiment, but actually starting to forward think, how is this really going to change the organisation? we are seeing some firms actually restructuring their teams and creating new roles. Things like digital ethics and cyber are becoming much more critical and much more important. And a lot of this is trying to understand some of those risks which we didn't have to before, so navigating those new areas. But other firms we're starting to see who are leading in this space start upskilling. Really upskilling at an organisational level in the tech literacy required, but actually then starting to reskill. So some of those examples that I've talked about, it will say, where can you take somebody who's got the skills in ethics and actually helping them to think about what AI ethics might mean. And if we really look at it, you're saying, since 2000, it'd say that 10% of the job titles didn't exist that we have today. So we're really seeing that change in the roles that are important and an evolution in that.
And having said that, what would you say what are the specific skills that are becoming critical for an AI-driven workspace?
Yeah, so I think there's really two angles to this and really expand on what I've touched on. But first of all is that tech AI literacy. So there'll be a small proportion of the workforce that need to have really deep skills in this, yeah? Then there's probably another portion which really need to understand the tech and the AI integration and how to really reconcile that with the business priorities and really focus on the areas where you can get greatest return. At an organizational level, actually, we need to be thinking about tech literacy. That has got a common skill that everybody's got to have, alongside the greater focus on those more human skills. So to really enhance creativity and enhance collaboration.
And given these shifts, what is your recommendation to organizations how they can really align their talent strategy with these new rising business needs?
Yeah, so what we see many firms doing is how can we trial and how can we experimenting this? But actually to start to scale this, you need to be thinking about your strategic workforce planning. You need to be thinking about where's this organization going to be and how is work going to get done in 2 to 3 years' time? And how can we really think about what are actually the skills that are going to be critical and what's the best way to be able to achieve that? So you're thinking about those business priorities. You're then really going to look forward and saying, what does that mean in terms of the workforce we need? And then where are we today? So what's the current skills and what's the future going to mean? And then really saying, how best are we going to fill that gap? So is this a case of actually, we do have a delta. Where do we need to upskill our people? Where do we need to reskill? So that people whose actually jobs might be less in demand, how can we reskill those into areas which are more in demand? Or where are actually jobs going to be more augmented, or might they be replaced by automation or robotics?
Yeah, I think that's an important one. And I would be curious if you could elaborate a little bit more on what really this skill-based approach means and entails.
Yeah, so what this really means is thinking about what are the skills that are needed to get the work done. Mm-hmm. And this is really a shift away from thinking, right, what are the jobs? And often the first thing we do is do a job structure chart. Well, this is really thinking about if those are the jobs, if that's the work that needs to be done, what does that mean in terms of the skills? Yeah? And then thinking about this through the hire to retire cycle. So are we recruiting based on the skills that we need for today and for tomorrow? Are we developing and prioritizing those skills? Are we rewarding skills? And then are we promoting and investing in our learning in the critical skills that are needed? So it's really thinking about it through a skills lens in terms of where's the organization going, what are skills that are needed, and then really, really reinforcing that throughout the hire to retire cycle.
Yeah. I mean, it resonates a lot with me, but still, if you could dive a bit deeper on what really the benefits are of this approach.
Yeah, I think this is really important. So for organizations, it means you can actually do this planning ahead. And this means avoiding those strategic shocks where you might have roles that are no longer required, or new roles where you suddenly haven't got the skills because you haven't anticipated it. And it's making sure you can actually plan ahead and get there, and get there in a way that makes the most out of your workforce. We want to avoid having to cut jobs at short notice. We want to avoid needing people and having to buy in expensive contingent labour because we haven't thought ahead of this. You know, I worked with a client in the UK who really needed to focus on blockchain but hadn't thought about it. And it was a bit of a surprise to them, and suddenly they had a huge demand in this space and didn't have the skills and needed to get them quickly. So at an organisational level, it's making sure you don't have strategic shops, you can manage it in the most efficient and effective way possible and deliver what the business needs at the right point. But actually, if I do want to expand on this, because it isn't just about organisations being productive, being efficient, having the right people in the right place. It's actually for individuals and for employees, this means you can have a more personalised career. So traditionally, you would have thought, right, what's my job? What's the next level above? What do I need to do that? Well, actually, if we take in a skills-based approach, it means it opens up a number of different career paths for you, which means you can take the core skills that you've got, and by growing them or reskilling them, you can take a whole range of different career options to you and really get more, really empowers you to really drive your career in the direction that you'd like to take it.
Maybe if I can build on that, right? I think there are indeed big benefits for both the organization and the employee. And I think traditionally, you know, when there was a need for new roles, more people, you would go externally to the market, right? You would hire, you would recruit, that would take time. With, I think, the skills-based approach and the insights that it brings, you can actually look at, okay, what is my workforce? Who has which skills? What might be adjacent skills? Can I actually internally develop people to become to get the skill you want them to have, instead of going outside, right? So it really provides, like Rachel said, more career opportunities, but also for the organization, like looking at upskilling and reskilling better, well, benefiting or leveraging the internal talent you have in the organization.
Yeah, and Tessa, if we stick for a moment with you, because I know that you recently helped the client to exactly implement this skills-centric approach. So obviously it would be nice if you can share some experiences and how that went and what the benefits are out of that.
Of course, certainly. I indeed supported several clients on their skills transformation, but there's one that I think particularly stood out to me because of the challenge and how they brought it to us. So at some point, the CIO of this company came to us actually quite frustrated because their competitor, which is smaller in size and revenue, managed to launch like an AI-driven agent in their app earlier than they did. So he was really like, okay, why can't we do this, right? I'm sure we have the people in-house. And it really showed they had lacked visibility of the internal talent and the skills in-house available to build teams at a pace, like when it was needed. And on top of that, I think they experienced quite high turnover. And actually, employees voiced that they found it easier to find a job outside of the organization than inside, right? Which is, if you think about it, quite strange. So we helped them. We helped them map their workforce, basically. So we started with doing, I would say, a job to skills mapping, which is basically looking at your job architecture and together with market data showing, hey, what are the skills we need for the future? Then we looked at, okay, what are the skills we actually have in-house, right? So the skill supply side, and we looked at what are the individual skill profiles. And of course, if you get the two together, the skill supply and demand side, you can visualize the skill gap within the organization. And I think that was really the starting point for their wider skills transformation. Then we looked at how can we close the gap, right? Buy, build, borrow, sometimes bought. And we went with implementing internal skill-based mobility. So we implemented the telemarketplace. We looked at skills-based learning and recruitment to really close that gap. And what I really like is that to see the impact that those skills and insights actually had, right? It was easier for them to pull together those agile teams. They could make better use of the talent they have in-house, so be more productive in the end. And really, employee engagement went up in that sense. And the funny thing, like I think throughout the program, actually their workforce situation changed. So instead of having high turnover, they now had, I would say, too many employees. But with this skills approach, they could now, they knew where their talent was, right, and what skills they had. They could easily redeploy to where it was most needed, where there was the highest demand. So I think whatever your, I would say, workforce situation is, this could really help with the skills-based approach, yes.
Tessa, thanks for sharing. I think that's a great example of how strategic workforce planning really can have a positive outcome and also give some ideas to our audience online what you could do. So I see that we get already questions from the audience, so I would like to address some of them, and I encourage you to ask more questions by using the chat functions. And let me see. This is quite an interesting one to start with. Someone online is asking if this is just another HR problem, or is this something relevant for every business leader? What would you say?
Yeah, so I think this is I think it's a particularly interesting question that we've asked, because it's often HR who know and understand the imperative for this, and this is really important, but actually they struggle to be able to get traction. But what we see is when this becomes really getting the imperative, and the example which you've talked to, is when the business leaders are looking ahead and going, I cannot deliver my objectives without doing this, whether it's a CIO or a chief information officer or a chief risk officer, chief finance officer. They're looking ahead and going, I cannot deliver the strategy and the business imperatives with the workforce that we've got, and I need help to be able to get them in the right place. Whether it's thinking about what are those skills I need, where globally are we going to organise those skills? So we actually see really the business imperative often being the pull for lots of this. And often we end up working with clients to really say, yes, HR can help you to do this, and give them a voice.
Yeah, thank you.
Maybe to build on that, right? HR should definitely help drive it, but if they do it on their own, it's not very likely they will be successful, right? The full organization needs to be behind this, especially leadership. You need to buy in to drive this and really have the impact.
Yeah, yeah. And as we have a very diverse audience online from different industry, can you elaborate a little bit how that affects the different industry? Are there differences, or is it the same for every industry and sector?
Yeah, well, I think Tessa and I have both got quite a lot of different industry experiences, and we've probably both got a view on this. I think from what I have seen, different industries are probably at a different level of maturity in it. So I think some of my examples working in financial services, we saw actually banking as it moved to digital, it moved away from branch banking. This was really an early priority for it, 5 years ago, but we're now seeing insurance and wealth and asset managers starting to worry about this. And I think we're then starting to see this perhaps within life sciences. You haven't really had to do this, but some of the demands with patents, some of the demands in terms of the way you go about and sell your products, that's making a significant shift on it. So it's about the timing of it and the imperative to which this becomes a burning platform. Any other industries you want to comment on?
Yeah, I think this originally maybe started more in the tech side of things, right? Because there is a big skill gap, especially in tech. However, if I look at my clients now as well, and where we get a lot of questions, especially also in energy, right? Because of the energy transition, they really need to shift their way of working, requires new skills, it's more complex, it's unknown. And there we see, I think, big traction as well, and this could be really relevant to have a more skills-based approach and have these insights, yes.
So understand, to sum it up, everyone is affected by it. It's relevant for any industry. No, I totally agree. I think another interesting questions we received, and I think that's very relevant for our talents out there. Do you see already changing career paths?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. So I think definitely yes, and then in a positive way, right? I think traditionally we would have more vertical career paths, right? But now really stepping away from your role, but looking at the skills and where they could be applicable within the organization, I think there's multiple ways to go. You could say it's more horizontal, more diagonal. Some people call it a career jungle gym. I think there are more options out there to build your career path. And look at what some of the adjacent skills are and where they could be relevant in the organization. And of course also where you as an individual want to grow.
Yeah, and as a talent ourselves, I mean, how can we personally equip ourselves to really work in this new working world? What is your recommendations?
Yeah, so I'll give some initial thoughts there. So I think there's two components of this. It really is empowering, which actually for some people that can feel a little bit uncertain, but being clear what you enjoy doing, what you're passionate about. And as I often actually talk to many of the teams that I work alongside with, I don't have all the skills I need for the organisations that I'm going to support over the next 6-12 months and beyond that. The challenges that are facing organisations, which I've talked through, the geopolitical, the economic, you know, the digital trends impacting us, we don't always know this. So really thinking about actually where do I really enhance my skills? How's actually my role going to change? How can I proactively learn and invest? And that continuous learning and investment is key. Be curious and invest in the skills which you're really passionate about, both in terms of where your career wants to go, how your role's going to evolve, but what you're really interested in. And that's really a call out for, you know, both as an individual, but also whether you're a leader or at an organisational level, you know, really invest and spend time in learning and continuous growth.
Yeah, and I would say we are already now in a moment where the working world is already changing a lot. So if you look into your crystal ball in the next 10 years, what is your guess how it would further change?
I'll give a first view on that.
Yeah.
Please do add. So, if you look at some predictions, they'll really say, well, actually, a lot of the manual work that is likely to go. All the things that perhaps we don't enjoy doing in our job means that those will be done easier, whether it's through AI or other tools. And it could also mean for those working in factories, a lot of actually some that, you know, you're going to be using robotics or other tools to be able to help work get done. Yep. So that actually means that we can focus our work on energy on more value add or more people-centered work. So it might mean the size and shape of our organisation is going to evolve. And it might also mean that instead of rigid structures, we might actually more increasingly, I've talked about skills, be what's the right person who's got the right skills for this job right now, and a much more agile and networked approach to organisations. And many might feel uncomfortable with that, especially if you're in a regulatory or control function, but actually thinking about what are the skills we need now, and how can we bring together different skills to be able to get a job done? So we're increasingly looking at that, certainly in the next 5 years. 10 years ahead, I'm not quite sure on. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, and I think you already mentioned in the beginning, Rachel, I think we work towards a more augmented workforce, right, where AI and the human work together. So all these people skills become more and more important, but also things like cultural awareness, communication. So definitely those are, I would say, the skills to watch out from a soft skill perspective.
Yeah, so I'm hearing we are on a journey. There will be further journeys, but if our clients would ask for recommendations, where should they start in the journey?
Good question, right? So we see many clients starting in different points. One buys the technology and just goes and runs with it. But if we would start from a blank piece of paper, I would suggest first define the business problem you're trying to solve, right? What are we trying to solve? And then how are we going to solve that, and how is skills gonna help with that? And then typically, if we really zoom in on the skills approach, we start with building the foundation. So what are the skills I have? What are the skills I need? And then what is the skill gap? And how are we going to close that? What then happens is you have these skills-based learning, recruitment, etc. And we tend to see clients start at skills-based learning or development, for example, because it has a very close connection with skills and talent. Yeah, that would be my recommendation.
And I think we were actually talking beforehand, we were sharing a few of our own experiences, and we find that often firms, they've probably invested in some tech, or they've built a big skills taxonomy and it's not working. So often many firms have started to invest and we're not getting that impact. Actually coming it down, bringing it back to the things that Tessa's just talked to, it really helps you get that traction and prioritise on where's going to make a difference for the business.
Absolutely.
That's where you get the return.
And maybe to close this very interesting interaction and session, what are some of the recommendations for our clients out there that you would give them based on your experience?
I would definitely say, one of my clients once said, yeah, maybe don't boil the ocean, right? Don't try to do everything at the same time, because it can get very big. Prioritize, like back to the problem you're trying to solve, prioritize, think big, start small, right? Pick one use case, deliver value, and then take the next one. So you can really also learn throughout the process. Definitely would be my lessons learned.
Yeah, and I'll echo that. But the other thing we often hear, your data's never going to be perfect, never going to be good enough. So don't use that as a reason not to start on this journey, and think about what you have got and actually what benchmarks and data can be easily got in the environment that we work in.
Wonderful. I think that's a great final statement. Thank you so much, Rachel, Tessa, for being here and sharing your insights. And for the audience online, I would like to highlight our next session, which is starting at 11:15. We will talk about empowering Treasury as the strategic partner. So you will learn more about how the role of Treasury is evolving. Again, the session will start 11:15, and it would be great to see you again. So I hope you enjoyed this session. Thank you very much for joining, and I wish you a great rest of the day, and bye for now.